Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session on unleashing inefficiencies in the payments market. My name is KP, and joining me today, we have none other than Kirill, who is the founder and CEO of Torus. Hi, Kirill. Happy to have you on today's session.
Yeah, hi, KP. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So just to share with the audience a little bit about Torus, of course, Kirill will be the man to explain that to you. But if I were to summarize Torus in one line, that would be, it is a developer of predictive analytics solutions for banks and payment services providers to add a little bit more transparencies to their payment schemes and help to optimize this by up to 20%. Did I get that right, Kirill? Or is there anything
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the playground we're looking at is the relationships between banks or payment service providers and payment schemes. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. And maybe you can share with the audience a little bit about yourself, some of your experiences.
Yeah, sure, for sure. So actually, I spent almost all my corporate career in consulting for banks and financial services industry. And at some point of time, I was working in Mastercard for around like 5 years, as well as consulting in how payment schemes are billing their customers. But at that point of time, we didn't take it forward. But then we sat down with my partner, who actually also was working in payments and banks, and figure out, so why don't we try to do a product out of that?
Yeah.
And we started slowly keeping it forward, and right now, so it looks like there's a good demand in the market. And so we say that we help to find the inefficiencies there are in the market, because in the end it enables banks and PSPs either to keep the margins and be more competitive, or like improving their bottom line.
Definitely. That's a really interesting product, actually, and something that I've not really seen too much of. So definitely be happy to dig into this payment space. So we've always been talking about payments, especially when we globally, it's one of the most digitized verticals in finance. So what's your view on the current situations on the cards payment market?
Yeah. So globally, it's keep growing, and it will continue growing, especially so there is some difference in different regions, especially how pandemic hit the market, but generally it keep growing at quite a good pace, for like 7 to 9% per year. But there are more and more players coming into the market, and it makes margins to squeeze. So that's why we believe, and we see that, and we hear from the banks and the PSPs that actually there is a growing need to find the inefficiencies within their internal processes, within how the products are made, how they talk, and what they do to their providers. I mean, technical ones and payment schemes as well, and then to unleash and find these inefficiencies in order to be able to be more competitive on the financial side. Because when you're a large bank and then there's some kind of small someone new, or someone is coming, so their cost profile is pretty much different. So that's why you should be more flexible and fast moving in order to compete.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. And we talked a lot about competitive environments and new players coming into the ecosystem, and essentially challenging or adding to the challenge of financial institutions. So from your perspective, what do you think, or do you think there is any room at all for improvement for banks or payment service providers in any sense? So from an operational perspective or from a front end perspective, do you think there's anywhere where we can see an improvement?
Yeah, for sure. And basically, there was a couple of researchers by big four companies saying that like 90% of bankers declare that like cost cutting and cost saving is like top one priority for them going forward for the next 2 years. And they are going to do that through digitalization. So yes, a lot is driven by the processes of like customer service, the product creation and product delivery. And but this is which is already well covered by existing solutions. So that's why when we started doing our thing, in the beginning we just went out to the banks and a couple of PSPs asking them, so is it something that you believe you can work on? And then we figure out the interesting thing that kind of 8 out of 10 players actually said that they would like to improve their bottom line when it comes to payment schemes.
Right.
Because like the typical answer was like, this is something that I'm not just very well clear on.
Yep.
It looks like it keeps growing even when my business is not growing, especially during the pandemic. But then at the same time, usually like those who are accountable for running these businesses in players, they're not fully realized that this area can be managed and how it can be managed. So, but overall, based on our experience, the cost saving and like efficiency improvement potential might be up to 20% on the overall like costs when it comes to relationship to payment schemes. Yeah, and because sometimes the players may end up paying some penalties for years without even realizing that they're being penalized, because in the invoice they're getting, no one is calling these penalties, for example. It's just kind of one single line called just a fee. Right. And the fees themselves are quite cumbersome, and it just was driven by the market, how it was shaped, that like large payment providers, they're sitting on this tube of card payments, and as public companies, they report to the shareholders that their revenues are growing faster than the volumes they process. Right. And the revenues comes from these fees. So the only way they can do that is just to constantly increase this fee burden. So by introducing new ones, increasing the old ones, splitting them, and typically banks are not that well on keeping up with these changes.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen, and that's a good way to end off, Kirill, with your last line, because now I'm thinking, why has there always been, or why is there a delay in addressing this issue? Because it seems like this is something that is definitely going to hit the bottom line or hit the profitability of any payments business. So why do you think, or why have they not applied any changes yet to this aspect?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and we're constantly asking it to ourselves. And it looks like there was not that heavy trigger before. So pandemic and this fast growth of the markets with a lot of new players coming in made banks to like look more on the cost side. While before, when the market was just growing double digit and there was a lot of space to grow further, they were more focusing on just bringing new products to the market rather than looking at the efficiency. Yeah. On the other hand, the level of complexity is quite high. So the resources needed internally by the bank or PSP to actually manage that on a regular basis are quite significant. Yeah. And as also the rules of the game, so meaning the tariffs and different technical rules are updated by the payment schemes at least once per quarter. So that's why it's kind of a dynamic game in which you as a bank should have quite a lot of dedicated resources or develop some dedicated software to keep up with that, as well as then updating that on a regular basis. So looks like based on our discussions with the bank, so beforehand it was, before it was looking at, so the value versus the resources needed was not matching in a well equation. So that's why we decided that it could be a good place where we can actually help them to outsource this need to update the model, to build it, but rather than provide the tool as a kind of as a service. So then like they just need someone inside, so one person inside to use that.
Right. That makes a lot of sense actually. Okay, so I mean we've now identified why it's taken some significant movement, or rather an entire pandemic, to trigger these need to drive change. How exactly then does Torus fit into the picture? Like, how does your solution help to drive this improvement?
Yeah. we say that there are like three main to customers. So first is just by adding clarity and granularity. So like just help them understand what exactly they're paying for, because it's not just a bulk number on the top level, but being able to split it by lines of businesses, by like different channels, products, and see where actually the costs are coming from.
Okay.
And sometimes it may be the case, or I don't know. So one product might be far more expensive in some particular channels, meaning that you should probably, as a bank, tend to stimulate your customers for some like desired payments behavior with this kind of product that you have.
Right.
So then the second pillar is ability to actually reconcile the invoices that you're getting, because again, many of the banks take it just as a given. So we're paying $1 million per year to this payment scheme. They should be kind of right, and that's it. But indeed, sometimes there are some like mistakes in the invoices, and then so the earlier you realize that, the earlier you can get your money back, because otherwise you end up like just kind of issuing free loans to payment schemes, which probably is not the best idea for a financial institution.
Yeah.
And also, as the rules, as I said, are changing at least once per quarter. So then we believe it's important to be able to forecast. So actually, what you will be paying like next quarter, the quarter after it, and also when it comes to launching new products, the more clear you're on the cost side and as well on the revenue side when it comes to interchange, for example, the better business case you can build, and then the more precise you will be going forward with this product. So then financial models are on a high level. And then there is third pillar, because indeed there are some inefficiency in the fee structure themselves. So meaning there are a lot of them, but some of them are not just needed for the bank. So for example, there might be some reports they're not using, or the efficient structure of the identifiers they're using, or as I mentioned, there might be even some penalties. And so we help to unleash that. So clearly show that this is this kind of penalty. And then solution also provides some kind of recommendation. So we have a dedicated model, and dedicated recommendation engine. So it does calculates the potential for optimization, so from cost saving potential and efficiency improvement potential. And then for each specific line, there is a dedicated recommendation. So what exactly bank should do to realize that potential. And basically that's it. And then there are some additional options how to use it, but right now we're stick to these main three pillars.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kirill. I think that's actually quite amazing what the product can do. So in that sense, what's needed to start using Torus as a solution?
Yeah, it is interesting because so usually we tend to not to ask any specific data to be prepared on the bank side, because we just use the information that they already have, because they already have the invoices that they're getting from payment schemes. They already have the so-called quarterly reported data that they send to card scheme on a regular basis. And then we can also use for transactional data, we just use the raw file that they're using for clearing, for example. And basically that's it. So no any special data preparation is needed on the bank side. So that's why for us it takes just a couple of weeks to start, and it's quite easy to kind of plug in. So just do some small either integration, or we can even start with some manual data update, because yes, indeed, so far it's not a real-time system, so it's not something that will be used like several times per day.
Yep.
But we believe that in a the efficiency is important. So that's why we update the more data on these and provide it to the banks. Like, I think it's sometimes when we start talking to that, it's important for you. But do you actually know some like additional, more detailed view on this? Are you satisfied with it? Do you know what is driving these costs? And then in many cases, yes, the answer is kind of, oh, I didn't know. I either had to look up or I have to like raise a task for my team that will be done in like 1 week. But then we show that, hey, this actually can be done in just like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So why don't you like be more efficient in that and spend less time on something that can be optimized? So that's the basic idea. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That sounds like a very straightforward solution that can, really have a big result at the end of it. So I think that's really interesting to hear. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Kirill. I think the whole idea behind Torus is really something that I've also not really heard too much about. It's something fairly new for me. So I think I learned something new today. So thanks for sharing. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was so nice talking to you. My
Likewise.
pleasure.
Likewise. And with that, I think I think we can conclude today's session on unleashing inefficiencies in the payments market. So thank you, Kirill, once again for your amazing presentation. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in to this session. I hope you gained a bit more of an insight into what payment operations, or rather what are some of the challenges that are still pertinent in the payment space, and how solutions like Torus can help to unleash even greater efficiency and transparency for all payment businesses. So thank you very much and have a fantastic rest of the Fintech Festival. And thank you, Kirill, once again. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.